Hello all you crazy people out there, my name is Dragonite, and welcome back to another little-known feature of GameMaker Studio 2. Maybe I shouldn't say little-known, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. So I have a game object here. Its name is Dude, and I have an empty draw event. There's nothing too exciting here. I believe I stuck some of them down in the room as well, so you can see there are a few instances of this this Dude object. Let's say you want to have a variable. Let's call it, I don't know, for example, name. I'm going to give you a default value of Dude. And not quite yet. I won't go into the room editor quite yet. Let's go into the draw event. And let's say you want to actually do something with that so that we can see that it's being used for something. Draw text. How about X, Y, minus 64. We'll draw it above your head. Hello, my name is name. I'll center the text also just so that it looks a little bit nicer. There we go. So now I'll run the game, and every instance in the room is now called Dude. This is like the GameMaker Surfer Club or something. I don't know. I don't think before I open my mouth. And let's say you want to give all these guys individual names. Previously in GameMaker, you would have gone into creation code. Let's give them all unique names. What's the most surfer name I can think of? That's almost cheating. But you can be called Marlin. You can be called... Oh god, now I gotta think of names. You can be called GLaDOS, because GLaDOS is totally a surfer. And you can be called... Thinking of names is the worst part of anything, I swear. Right before I started recording, I wrote down a list of things that I wanted to call all of the dudes, and I lost the list. Go me. I just finished reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy recently. That's on my brain. Okay. So now we'll run the game. All of these objects have been assigned to names, and you can see that they are the names are reflected in the little name badges above each of the objects, and that's fine. This is actually a lot better now than it used to be in old versions of GameMaker, because in old versions of GameMaker, the instance creation code in the rooms would have run before the create event, and when the actual create event rolled around and assigned the name Dude as the instance variable, that would have been the value that actually lasted, because the creation code would have basically had its value changed. And so if I were to have done this in like GameMaker 8, everybody's name would just be Dude still, which is not really what you want. But fortunately that changed, I think, in GameMaker Studio 1. But this still isn't a perfect system necessarily. If you rename your variable, if you were to call them, if you were to change the variable name to like my_name or something, and you were to draw that, which you're allowed to do, then all of a sudden, everybody's name is back to Dude, because you've also now got to change the variable name in each of the create events, which is a bit of a pain. GameMaker Studio 2, in a semi-recent update, I can't really say it was recent anymore because I think it was a few years ago now, but there's this little box underneath events, parent, physics, called variable definitions. And this is a list of predefined variables. This is the regular old variables. You just define them in a different place than the create event for an object. And you could call it whatever you want. Let's call it name. You have a type. So real number, integer, string, boolean, expression, resource, list, or color. I'll get to the other things in a minute. We're going to go with strings. And it's the default value is going to be Dude. And now I can come back to all of these instances. I need to remember what I called you. And for whatever reason, GameMaker likes to occasionally not save when you edit instance creation code, and it's rather annoying. Variables, you can see it's got one built in. It's got the default value, which I'm going to change. Who are you? Were you GLaDOS? I think you were GLaDOS. You've got to get the capitalization right too when you type out the word GLaDOS. I can get rid of that creation code. Again, it's not saving. Save. It's rather annoying. And you are Trillion, that's right. All right. So why does it do that? It's really annoying. Save. And we can edit your default value. So now when we run the game, there is really no need for this in the actual create event. In fact, I can just delete the create event now. And I can run the game, and you can see that this is going to crash because the variable that I defined is called name, and the one that I'm trying to draw is called my_name. False start, take two. You can see that this does what it does before. It's just that the variables have their values assigned somewhere other than the creation code. Now, if you wanted to change it to my_name or anything else, let's copy that into the draw event, and let's look at the instance variables definitions, and its name has been updated automatically. The variable name has been updated automatically. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to go through every instance in your entire game and change the creation code if you want to refactor. So that's nice. This is definitely a quality of life thing. It's not one that I actually use because I so rarely use the actual room editor. But if you were to use the room editor, it's extremely helpful. You don't necessarily have to use it for the room editor. You can just use it as a way to declutter your create event if you have a million variables and you don't want to just have them all in the create event. You can also, and I said I would talk about these later, you can also give some constraints for certain data types. Number types, for example, you have a range. You're allowed to confine the value to a range, and if you do that, you can see you also have a slider, which is quite nice. I am not a fan of drag and drop, and I have been vocal about that in the past, but this is visual coding that I think is much more helpful. Things like defining defaults, especially if you're working with a team of non-programmers and you want to have a quick and easy way for them to set values for objects and stuff without having to mess with code. Hey. And you can see if I go over here to the room, to the instance variables, you can see that the slider is here as well. And if you want to reset it to the default, you can hit the little minus thing and it'll go back to the default. Integers would be the same. It's just that there are you can't have decimals because it's an integer. Booleans, true, false, expressions. This is code, I believe. If I were to edit this, it would just be code. Let's see if I can just evaluate an expression in there. Oh, that's because they all have defaults. Alright, never mind, we won't do that. I'm gonna not do that. You can assign a resource, or you can assign a sprite, or a room, or I don't have anything else in this project, but you could give it a shader, or a script, or a font, or something like that. List. That's what you think it is. You can add list entries. And a color, which I think is extremely cool because it gives you a color picker that you can grab a value from, including transparency. That's like a halfway transparent blue. Let's make that a little less transparent so you can see it better. And it'll show you the hex code also. 8fs is fully white. I'm going to change this back to a string. I'm going to reset the default to something sensible, because when you change the data type, it will attempt to cast the value to the new data type if possible, which isn't always what you want. You can have as many variable definitions as you want, naturally. I assume there's a limit somewhere. I assume if you just clicked this button a literal million times, it would ask you to stop eventually, but most people probably won't do that. God, what was I gonna say? If I can't remember, it probably wasn't important, right? My name is Dragonite. This has been Instance Variable Definitions in GameMaker Studio 2. I remember when these were first added to GameMaker, I was real excited because they sounded really useful, and then I realized that I was never going to use them because I so rarely use the room editor. But they're there, and I hope that you all can find them a little bit more useful than I do. As always, link to the project in the video description. I hope you all enjoyed that, and I will see you all later.